Welcome to the Glazier Nation Podcast. My guest this week is Kayla Natividad. Kayla is with Pilkington North America, part of the NSG Group, and the purpose of this podcast was to present her and Pilkington with the Glazier Nation Sustainability Award for 2023. Sustainability is obviously one of the buzziest words in our industry, but it's also something we all need to work towards just for the survivability of our industry. Kayla and I talked about all things sustainability, from retrofitting old buildings to vacuum insulating glass to recycling glass. I had a great time chatting with Kayla, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Glazier Nation. You can check out Glazier Nation and all their offerings over at glaziernation.com. And a quick congratulations to Bob Lentz, who won Glazier Nation's Glazier of the Year 2023 award. You can check out Bob's story at glaziernationawards.com, and be sure to check out the National Glass Association, nga.org, to follow them for all news glass build, where Bob will receive his trophy in person. Kayla, hey, congratulations to you and Pilkington for winning Glazier Nation's Sustainability Award.
Thank you. We're really, really excited. We're honored, really. Put a lot of work into this area, so it's good to see that it's being noticed.
For sure. And sustainability has got to be one of the buzziest words in our industry. Can you give us kind of the broad range view? What is sustainability as it relates to glass?
Yeah, so I think sustainability is kind of a lot of things. It's way more than what I think most people would consider sustainable. Sustainable, a lot of times people think it's, your emissions as a manufacturer, what you're, essentially what you're putting into the air. But really with glass, it's much bigger in the sense that it's how we manufacture it, but it's also how we use it, how it's installed in buildings, the human benefits that it provides, the resiliency it brings to buildings. I don't know, it's just, and really even after we take it out, what happens with it after it's gone, after it's out of the building so I think sustainability for glass is kind of like, I don't think you can talk about sustainability of buildings without acknowledging glass provides huge benefits from that perspective.
Sure. And what I guess let's go with, what is Pilkington doing towards that cause?
Yeah. So I think we can break what Pilkington, like kind of our approach is, from two perspectives, right? We could think of the long-term stuff that I think is maybe what you read in articles where it's, we're looking at alternative fuels for how we fire our furnaces. In 2021, we had our first successful trial for hydrogen firing rather than just having natural gas use. We're installing solar fields at our locations to try to convert as much energy to renewable energy. We're looking at, obviously pollution control plans to help reduce our emissions, trying to figure out how we can just really help drive down those carbon emissions, drive down our energy usage, and really optimize the float process as a whole. And I think those are really like our long-term goals, right? And we've committed to these by doing we've committed to some science-based targets. I believe it's reducing our emissions by 30% by 2030. And then going net zero by 2050. So aggressive targets. But these are all I consider long-term, right? Because a float line is intended to run for, 20 years. And so there are really big shifts in the way you make glass. And I think we're making a lot of headway there from our research and development perspective of our manufacturing process. But these aren't necessarily changes you'll see tomorrow. These are much bigger picture changes.
Sure. Kind of like the analogy of moving a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Sure. So what are maybe some, and it's funny you mentioned the magazine articles, because as I led in with the buzziest word, I mean, it's got to be every fourth article that I see is next gen glass, sustainability glass, high performing glass. So what if those are the long-term targets, what is Pilkington looking at short-term to help that cause?
Yeah, so short term is exactly that. It's how can we optimize glass use and glass products to really help the short term benefits of the buildings that we're both retrofitting and new construction today, right? Um, what can we do to offer, I guess, the next best thing regarding building performance or occupant comfort or any and all of the above, all the check
Sure.
marks of
Sure.
lighting up thermal comfort. Um, and yeah, so we're doing a lot of work in, with thin glass. So now you hear the big buzzword of thin triples.
Yeah.
Thing. So we've been doing some work with thin triples with maybe some high performance secondary glazing.
What just in case someone is listening and they're not quite familiar with thin triples, can you kind of give us more of a basic definition of that? What is that?
Yeah, so if you think about a traditional triple IGU, you have a quarter inch glass with 2 half-inch air spaces.
Yep.
With thin triples, there's kind of two ways that you can approach it. One of them is a thin triple, meaning you kind of slightly reduce your glass thickness, but you're minimizing your airspace
Okay.
and using like so. But what we're really trying to do is we're trying to think of how people use glass, and we're looking in the line of maybe thin glass triples. So we're
Okay.
the thinnest glass you would install in a building is, I don't know, 3 millimeter, you'd say, because that's what can be tempered.
Right.
Now, people are constructing triple IGUs where the center light is, we'll say, 1.3 millimeters thick.
Okay.
And so on the same float line that we make our quarter inch, that we make our half-inch glass, we're making down to, I don't even know what it is in inches because it's so small, 1.3, one. I think in one of our lines we're floating down to like 0.8 millimeters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's just the different composition of the thickness in the IGU.
Right. Yeah. And so what you're able to do is by using this thin glass, you insert it into your IGU. So now you have a thin center light. You still have your 2 air spaces that add that additional insulation. So you get a triple perform. But now you're using a half or a double IGU form factor, right?
Yeah.
So it's still the double, fashion.
Is using the lighter glass, the thinner glass, is that a cost reduction thing?
No, it's not necessarily cost reduction. What it is it's a embodied carbon reduction. So you use less, right? The less material you use, the lighter weight it is. The lighter weight it is, the less structural you have to build to like carry that load. And so it's a lot of potential for new construction, but definitely a lot of potential for retrofits. And I think really one of the things we're trying to do is focus on updating all of the existing building stock to what should be, I guess, even modern performance, right?
Sure.
A lot of people forget that. Everyone focuses on new construction and they're really excited about the new buildings and, oh, we could get a net zero building today. Now we
Sure.
have to. But what about all of the building stock that was built yesterday or, 50 years ago? That's still there and it's still monolithic glass. What are we going to do with that? And so we're just kind of trying to drive home that like education. There are existing technologies that fit what those buildings have installed. Maybe another one you talked about is like VIG, right?
Yeah. Where are we now? At least where's Pilkington with VIG?
Yeah, we've been commercial.
Just to explain to anyone that's unfamiliar. And side question, real quick: do you say insulating or insulated?
Oh, that is a good question. It is definitely insulating.
Yeah, someone told me that it was kind of a pet peeve of theirs, and I've kind of stuck with it forever. I don't correct people when they say insulated, but anyone that's unfamiliar, VIG, vacuum insulating glass, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So think No, traditional IGU has two pieces of glass with airspace. In this case, it's two pieces of glass with, rather than a half-inch airspace, it's a 8,000ths of an inch gap where we vacuum all the air out to a near perfect vacuum. And then we seal that shut, and now you were able to achieve double IGU to triple IGU performance in a monolithic form factor. So double IGU performance in a 1/4-inch space profile.
Sounds like one of the too good to be true. So what is the downfall? Is it still too expensive?
I mean, it depends on what you're comparing it to, right?
Sure.
What we found really is this is again focusing on retrofits, right? From our perspective, there are a lot of options where it's one of the most cost-effective things you can do, because for any building built, I don't know, we'll say before 1970, a lot of them were monolithic glass that was installed, right? I mean,
down here in Florida, I mean, anything that was installed before 2018 was monolithic
right.
glass. So, sorry, proceed.
No, that's exactly it. And so you go through, you see this, and okay, well, you can take that out. You can retap the entire building to fit a standard IGU now, but now you're paying for it's more like the labor,
sure,
the additional materials that you're bringing in, or you can get a VIG, just take out that monolithic glass, replace it with a VIG, and use all your existing material. And then when you look at it from that perspective, I mean, the price point per square foot is going to be higher, but the overall finished installation cost is often.
So, okay, maybe I'm not a smart person, and that wouldn't be the first time I've discovered that. But the monolithic glass you're taking out is, I'm gonna say, 1/4 of an inch overall thickness, right? The VIG that you're putting back in, that's thicker than a 1/4 inch, no?
Nope, a 1/4 inch. It's two pieces of, we'll say, 2 pieces of 1/8 inch.
Okay.
A 8,000ths of an inch space between them.
I see. Okay. All right. So I didn't quite understand. And again, I'm working in the Florida market, so this would be a groundbreaking product down here. Okay, cool. So yeah, that does make a lot of sense in retrofit. That's amazing. We should do more of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I found that you made the comment of it's this like new groundbreaking thing, right? It seems like the next best thing, but I mean, we've been selling it commercially for over 25 years.
Okay.
It's just finally made its way to North America and really, I think, starting to take root. Like, so,
is that something that's like energy code driven or just awareness driven?
Yes, both.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Really, we're just now starting to see building performance standards coming through for existing buildings. Before you have all your building codes for new construction.
Yeah.
And then built, you don't have to touch it or look at it anymore. You build it to the standard that it was new construction to, and then you don't necessarily have to do anything to maintain that performance or improve performance after. You can if you want, but you don't have to. But now we're starting to see maybe some building codes coming up that are requiring, better performance of existing buildings.
So you guys are probably pretty plugged into following energy code and trends and conversations at that topic. What do you see in terms of trends kind of going forward? Is it kind of more of the same, or are there some alternate paths?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same story you've probably heard, right? Energy codes are getting tighter with every cycle. Sure. Better performance. And I think we're starting to see, it's more than just about your building's energy performance. It's how it impacts the building occupants now, right? So we're starting to maybe see some like daylighting requirements, or maybe starting to see some more specification regarding just occupant comfort in general. But one thing I've actually been hearing lately is just with general, I don't know what you want to call it, global warming, climate change, the whole inset of that.
Sure.
Weather trends change. And so we're starting to see colder winters in the south. You're starting to see hotter summers in the north. And with that, I think we're going to start seeing maybe U factor requirements in the south, or a little tighter U factor requirements in the south.
Sure.
Or maybe before in the north, we would really benefit off of passive solar heat. But in certain areas, we might start seeing some more stringent solar heat gain requirements for those summers. So, yeah.
I don't want to talk about the winters getting colder in the south, because when it dips below 40 degrees down here, we are not comfortable.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned some of those trends. So I moved to Florida from Colorado, and I worked in glass glaze. I worked for a company out there called Metro Glass. And you mentioned natural daylighting, and I specifically remember specifications requiring, it's foot candles, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I've been here 8 years, so I haven't seen that in a long time. But just the difference of kind of what they were looking at versus what we're looking at here in Florida, which is, you mentioned solar heat gain. I mean, that's what we're mostly concerned with. But you're correct. The last few cycles of code down here, the U factor requirement has gotten tighter. And we're kind of looking at a new code cycle that I think would be coming this December. And I haven't seen any rough drafts or anything, but I'm anticipating we're right on the precipice right now where we need a high-performing, low-E insulating glass type unit, but we don't necessarily need a thermally broken storefront. And I'm kind of anticipating that we'll probably cross that threshold. So I'm with you. I kind of see or hear the same things, kind of just moving in the same direction. But that was interesting how you talked about weather changing, and maybe I haven't quite noticed that, but it definitely was colder this winter here in Florida than I can remember recently.
It was a much more mild winter here in Ohio. So.
Yeah, that's weird. But then other places I saw getting 6 feet of snow at a time, and
yeah, I think we had one big blizzard come through, and that was the coldest I'd ever seen, and it was in the wind chills in the negatives, and that happened over maybe a weekend, and so I was really. It was going to be cold because I'm originally from Texas, so I also the cold. And that came through. I got a little nervous, and then afterwards, it's kind of been smooth sailing. We saw an early spring, so yeah.
Hopping back to glass, maybe this is a combination of a short term and a long term item. Is where are we as an industry, even the construction industry, I guess, in recycling glass?
Yeah, I think we're about where this is a tough one. I think we're at a place where we're ready to start acknowledging and talking about it. I say that I can say it. In North America, we have kind of an interesting situation where I think maybe people have wanted to, but we just don't. It's a very large country, right? And we just don't really have the infrastructure set up to be able to do it. Yeah. So even if everyone wanted to start today, and everyone said we're going to commit to it today, we don't have the infrastructure set up to actually support that right now. And so that's where the discussions are starting to happen of, well, what changes do we need to make? What changes should we be looking at? Is it changes in the way we transport? Is it changes in, where in the supply chain or stream should the recycling begin? Where should it end? Because, I think as an industry as a whole, and not just here in Europe as well, I think it's time that the glass industry and the flat glass industry is really starting to take a look and say, how can we do better?
What, as a major manufacturer, how do you respond when you see legislature talking about glass banning, like we've seen in either New York or Australia? What's kind of the reaction to that?
A little frustration because it's not true. The legislation is saying, oh, we want more efficient buildings, and then people interpret that to mean they want to ban glass. We're going to ban glass and use less of it. And I think that's not necessarily true. I think from our perspective, we hear that and we immediately go out and start educating again, because it's not about using less glass; it's just using better glass. Yeah, it's gonna look bad if you're looking at a building that was built in, I don't know, even 1980, compared to like the technology and systems that we have today, right? And so I think I kind of, when I first read them, kind of roll my eyes, and then I'm like, okay, time to like pull together more information on this, like how, and NGA is doing a advocacy day in DC now, and we did it last year, we're doing one again this year, and I think going through and trying to make Capitol Hill acknowledge that like it's glass isn't a bad thing. And
yeah, I suppose that's interesting because like you've already mentioned how large of a country we are, and then how many different issues there are outside of construction. And then when you get into construction as a subset, how many different products and industries and sub-industries are there that how could they really understand the performance of every product in the building? So I think that's great that at least the industry is aware that educating those folks is a priority. Because if glass goes away, then I don't know what I would do. I mean, I don't know anything different than glass. So
I live and breathe glass. So
my first install, I was 14 years old working for my dad, and I've tried to leave the industry many times, but it never worked, and I always come back.
Yeah, I will. And I've learned that in the glass industry, a lot of people, like most of the glass industry, it is generations that was, and I think that's really cool. I'm the first one from my family. I just happened to get really lucky when I was in college, and my professor took me under his wing and let me start doing some testing, and I just stuck with it. So
either lucky or cursed, whichever way you want to look at it.
I'm gonna go with lucky. But catch me on like a stressful week, and then we'll talk about it.
If you're going to work in the construction industry in any aspect, glass is by far the sexiest product that you can work with. It's what everybody likes to see on a building. It's what everybody wants to see from inside the building, so you can see outside.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people overlook it because they see through it and don't see it. I don't know. I'm sure you go. I can't walk down any downtown in any city without being like, oh, look at that glass installation. Oh, look at that one. And like you see it, work with it. But
absolutely.
Most people just kind of take it for granted because they just it's intended to be looked through, which is one of the benefits. But
yeah, I mean, unless you work in construction, I find that you would take most of that stuff for granted. Like you don't quite know how a building is built. And I don't know a ton about the other trades either. But like an example that I give, I guess I probably give this to architects mostly, is how our systems work, our storefront and curtain wall systems work, of how they take water and water leaves the system, where I bet 90% of people look at that and just think water's bouncing off of it, right? So same kind of concept. Speaking of glass and working with glass, I have worked with bird glass, bear glass, and turtle glass. What other animals need their own glass?
I don't know. I've played with this a while, right? You see zoo enclosures in general. You see the videos where some animals maybe are going after their reflection, and others enjoy seeing their reflection. And honestly, if anybody in the animal sciences community can tell us, please do, because obviously the industry and Pilkington specifically, but the industry as a whole is willing to adapt to anything that's needed from that perspective, right? Part of the sustainability discussion as a whole, it's not just human sustainability, it's the world, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about with the bird and the turtle glass. The bear glass is I've seen that in a zoo, so that's different.
Little that caught me off guard.
Yeah, that was for a zoo enclosure. So
okay,
I'm assuming like gorilla glass is probably the same thing.
Yeah.
a big, strong animal that people want to look at through glass.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can do with it. We have highly reflective products, we have anti-reflective products, we have tinted and clear, and I don't know. Right now, obviously, birds and turtles are the only two that are included in legislation, but I'm sure at some point somebody's going to bring up another one. So I'm excited to see what the next big one is.
I'm going to guess bats.
Ooh.
But maybe that's like included with birds. Maybe I don't, well, no, because they don't seem like birds. It's got to be glass that has, sonar.
Yeah. We got to get the inner layer companies on this one.
All right, Kayla, to wrap it up, what is the number one goal for glass?
I think the number one goal for glass is to be seen as a solution and not as a problem. It answers so many questions that I think building owners and designers and occupants and everyone in between are looking for. But I think it's often targeted as part of the issue whenever they go through to figure out how to solve it. And I think all that can be fixed just through education. Just keep talking about it, keep doing keep doing the podcasts, do presentations, and that's, once you spread the word, people will figure it out. So
I think that's a great answer. And it is similar to how when we water test an exterior envelope, we always find the water at the window, but it is not always the cause of the water. So it's easy to point the finger, I think, at the glass, but you're right. It solves a lot of the problems that people want. People want natural light. They want views. And then, like you said previously, just using the correct glass and then educating people so they can choose that correct glass. All very well said. Kayla, greatly appreciate your time. Congratulations again.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Glazier Nation's Sustainability of the Year Award. I might not be you're going to get a trophy or a plaque or something that'll have it correctly spelled on it.
I want both versions.
We'll see if that's in the budget.
All right, I'll take one.
All right. Awesome, Kayla. Thanks so much.
No, this has been great. Thank you.